everyone. You're listening to The Future of Food Is You, a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. I'm your host, Abena Anim-Somuah, and each week I talk to emerging talents in the food world, and they share what they're up to, as well as their dreams and predictions for what's ahead. I love this new generation of chefs, bakers, and creatives making their way in the world of food, drink, media, and tech. My guest for today's episode is Kelsey Armstrong, the artist behind Haricot Vert, the Brooklyn-based jewelry and accessories line. There's a good chance the coolest person you know has an Haricot Vert earring, necklace, or bag in their collection. Kelsey's pieces, which she calls wearable poetry, feature whimsical charms and unique combinations. Think tiny radishes, sticks of butter, raspberry tarts, shrimp, and more. You should really peek at her Instagram or website before listening to this episode. Kelsey involves customers in this process at the new Haricot Vert store in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, where you can create your own combinations of charms as a form of self-expression. I love chatting with Kelsey about the story behind Haricot Vert, how her creativity was sparked during her time in Paris, and her approach to entrepreneurship. Stay tuned for our chat. The next issue of Cherry Bomb's print magazine is almost here, and it's all about the city of the summer, Paris. Whether you're planning a trip to Paris or daydreaming about a future visit, you'll love this issue. Get recommendations from folks like Molly Boss and friend of the pod, Zainab Issa. Learn about the coolest Parisians on the food scene, and check out the fun Frenchy recipes to add to your repertoire. You can subscribe now at cherrybomb.com or pick up an issue at your favorite local bookstore, magazine shop, or gourmet store. Places like Bem Books and More and Book Larder in Seattle. Or visit cherrybomb.com to order an issue today. Looking for some fun things to do this summer? Check out Cherry Bomb Summer Series. The Cherry Bomb team is hitting the road and stopping in at least 8 cities, from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, for special dinners, networking events, and even Women Who Grill celebrations. Learn more and get tickets at cherrybomb.com. Now, let's check in with today's guest. Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us on the Future of Food Is You podcast.
I really appreciate you having me.
Can you tell us where you grew up and how did food show up in your life?
I kind of grew up all around the United States. I was born in Nevada, ended up living all over California, spent some time in Hawaii, went to high school in Florida. After that, I went to school in France. I kind of had a lot of different experiences, even just different multicultural experiences living in the U.S. For example, when I lived in Hawaii, my mom's a really good cook. I think a lot of moms are, but she got really into the local cuisine there. I just have really great moments growing up with her cooking really delicious Hawaiian meals. And even in California, she got really into like Mexican cuisine. And when I started having an interest in French growing up, she started cooking really good French food. I've always had a connection to it with my mom.
Is she a Julia Child stan just by nature of loving French food or encouraging you to love French food?
Yeah, she definitely is. She's got a huge collection of cookbooks.
Oh, that's really sweet. You go to Paris for university, studying at the American University, living many people's Francophile dreams. How did it shape your experience with food and design?
I really just consider Paris to be such a beacon of inspiration. You know, walking down the streets, notably, there was this street called Rue Saint-Dominique near my university.
What arrondissement is your university in?
It was in the 7th, near the Eiffel Tower.
Yes, very cool.
But, you know, just walking through the open markets and going to the fromagerie and the butcher shops. I'm a very visual person, so I just started seeing little cutouts of things, and I wanted to find ways in my mind to piece together like little stories. And as a designer, I will say that I put so much emphasis into storytelling and finding ways to do that with visuals. When I was living in Paris, I started seeing those little visuals kind of come to life, kind of like in a daydreaming sort of way. I started taking mixed media classes at my university, the marriage of going to school in France, but also getting inspired with collage. Blending those together really started sparking my creative juices.
Yeah. Did you study art when you were in school, or was the mixed media thing just a minor or a class that you took specifically?
So I majored in international business and marketing, and
Very
I
cool.
minored in fine arts. At this time, I didn't really think of myself as a creative, but getting into this program really helped me.
Well, I feel like it's kismet we're talking to you because we're about to launch the Paris issue, and also the Olympics has put Paris on the center stage. So I'll have to ask you, what are 3 favorite places in Paris that inspire you as an artist or a creative?
The first place in Paris that comes to mind is Pigalle,
Yes.
which is the red light district.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the neon signs, Moulin Rouge, and also Montmartre, that is a neighboring area.
Where the Sacré-Cœur is.
Yeah, Basilica.
Mm-hmm.
So that area always kind of had a special place in my heart. And the movie that you've probably seen, Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain.
Yes.
I absolutely adore that movie, and I just loved retracing her steps and seeing that in Paris. I will also say there was a really beautiful street also by my university called Rue Claire, Paris's most famous street for like open markets and
Oh, very cool.
especially on the food side of things. I loved like dining there and just like getting groceries there and really living that like French existence of going store to store.
When did you start designing jewelry, and why did you decide on there being this element of food incorporated into your work?
I really started with collage. My collages were quite mini. I started seeing kind of how they could like drape down and almost become jewelry. I really do have like an entrepreneurial side to myself. I founded the Entrepreneurship Society at my university.
Very cool.
I got really into startup competitions. And this was a time in my life where I knew I wanted to do something in business. I most likely wanted to work for myself, but I needed to find a way to bring creativity into that because I'm passionate on the business side of things, but I still wanted it to have that blend. But as you know, in a lot of creative things, they're not always lucrative. So I was trying to find a way to like bring my collage into a business realm where I could make a product that people would enjoy. I started doing a lot of research about collage jewelry, and I saw that nobody was really doing it. But the only issue was I had to figure out how to do it and make it durable because essentially paper, it's not waterproof. That's kind of where that whole idea started, and then the R&D went from there. I decided that I wanted to find ways to storytell. So at this time I was back in New York and I was missing Paris, and I really wanted to tell the story of when I lived there. For me, there was no better way to connect that with food-inspired jewelry. So I went into my photo roll and I started gathering photos that I took of picnics by the Eiffel Tower or by the Seine. I started kind of cutting out these little pastries and croissants and sardine tins.
Yeah.
And then I started incorporating it in the jewelry that way.
That's really cool. But you did this before the iPhone came out with that like sticker feature, because now you can sort of pick things out of your phone, right?
Yeah. But when that came out, it saved my life. I will say that.
They thought of you when they put that. How did you come up with the name Haricot Vert, which is green bean in French for our listeners?
So when I was in French class in high school, when we were learning all the vegetables, when I learned Haricot Vert, I don't know why, I just giggled and I thought it was so silly. It just stuck with me. It was just a word that never left my mind. And when I went to school in Paris later on, something spiritually told me that I need to find a way to like use this in my life. I don't know what that means, but I need to bring Haricot Vert to whatever I end up doing in life. So when I did decide to make the jewelry brand a business, I thought no better name than Haricot Vert. I kind of also think of our charms as these little beans too. And now I have such a lovely team of female creatives that work with me, and we call ourselves the Gals of the Bean. And yeah, it's a really cool creative environment.
Yeah. Everyone needs their own French vegetable name going forward. So you dub your art as wearable poetry. Why do you consider it that way?
When it came time to come up with a tagline for the brand, it came to my mind instantly because, in our dangle sets that we do and like the charm necklaces, each charm to me tells a little bit of a story. And we incorporate a lot of words in our charms and handwritten elements. To me, Haricot Vert is more than just a jewelry brand. It's a story that we're all telling. I'm also a romantic, so I like to romanticize life, and I like to think of life as poetry.
I am so fascinated by artists. As someone who can't draw to save my life, I do respect artists. And as an artist, where do you currently draw inspiration from, and how do you organize that in a visually appealing way for yourself?
It's always evolving, I will say. Mainly, I will say that I think very thematically. So once I have a theme that's currently inspiring me, I could be walking down a street and see a disco ball, and then I'll be like, okay, we have to do a disco collection now. For the next month, my mind is just all disco. I just can't stop thinking about disco. I see disco symbols everywhere. I don't really come up with like mood boards, but what I do is I gather a document and I just start putting things in there that could potentially be charms. I start photographing things on the street. I have a huge vintage magazine archive. I'll start cutting out ones that I just think are going to be perfect for a collection. So that kind of starts it. And then from there, I gather all of our vintage and dead stock components. I go into our archives and see what we have that could work. And also the components themselves that we use, the little gems and the little drops and brass components, those also add a level of inspiration for me, taking it into this other world of like bringing old treasures and bringing them into like this new life.
It sounds like you almost start the business to honor your time in Paris and memorialize it in a unique way. And then you start sort of making designs and selling them on Instagram. Can you tell us what the first designs were like and how did it help you in growing your audience and getting people to know you?
It was an interesting time. It's really hard to put yourself out there. Most creatives I talk to, I know so many talented people that are just afraid of just doing the first post, which is the Band-Aid part. In the beginning, I finally got the courage to start posting a few of my designs because the thing is I didn't think of myself as a jewelry maker or an artist at this time because that's not how my childhood shaped me to be.
And you were working a full-time job too while you were thinking about this, right?
Yeah. I didn't really have the confidence, but finally I'm just like, I don't care. I'm just going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to start putting out my little creations. So my first design was from a vintage Barbie book from like the 50s. They were actual cutouts from the Barbie book of two different Barbies. At this time, I was just laminating them because I had the idea of the collage, but I didn't do the R&D yet. Till this day, the quality isn't what I would like them to be, but...
Are they in your sort of archive or are they off to a customer somewhere in the world?
They're off to a customer somewhere and they're
nice.
One of our first posts on Instagram, but that was me putting myself out there. Yeah, I started a lot with like the eyeballs and hands and kind of more the collage elements, but then slowly started moving into the more storytelling with food and wine and different like poetic words.
Yeah, and it sounds like the push to start this business was putting it on Instagram. How did social media play a role in building your confidence and also getting you to feel more inspired to create exciting things?
Yeah, I know people talk poorly about social media and, there's...
Mixed feelings.
Yeah, mixed feelings. There's pros and cons. I will say I thank my career to Instagram, which is kind of crazy in this modern world. Up until 2 months ago when we opened up our brick and mortar, before that, our brick and mortar was Instagram. Continuously posting, you'll rise and you'll fall. Like in the beginning, some posts didn't get any likes or any traction, but little by little, I just was like, I'm just going to keep building this and see what happens. And then next thing you know, people are like just super supportive and telling me to keep making. I got some of the most beautiful messages from supporters in the beginning because I would do these little mini drops and it was only like 10 pieces and they'd all sell out. People were like, how do I get this piece? Like, I need this piece, keep making more. And then that started inspiring me to make more and giving me that confidence.
And they were all in New York, or were you getting people from around the country, around the world? How did that sort of play out?
At this time, I was only shipping, I think, in the U.S., but it was all over. But I would say historically, and at least now, I think our main audience is in New York.
Well, this is a perfect segue into my question of, has there been an exciting or memorable customer experience that motivates you on the days when things are tough or just makes you so happy about what you're building?
Yeah, I mean, especially now with the brick and mortar, we have a really unique space where it's like our little headquarters. So we all work upstairs, but we can oversee the store and then our production facilities downstairs. So it's really nice when get the opportunity to speak with a customer and them telling me about their experience with the brand. I will say a really cool experience I had was when I was at my old studio. Before we got our brick and mortar, we had this girl, her name's Yasmina. She's a friend of mine today.
Oh, so beautiful.
But she was a big supporter and she would always buy from the drops, the one-of-a-kind drops. So they were very limited, but she always wanted to come pick up in person. I think like on the third or fourth time, I was like, we should hang out sometime. I really like you. Still to this day, we're friends and she's a big supporter, but it's been really cool also to make friendships with some of our customers.
Let's talk about the charms. It's the bread and butter, pun intended, of the business. Can you tell us the process of making the charms?
The process is proprietary, but basically we start by sourcing all of our imagery, and that can vary from like magazine cutouts, photos from the street, PNG, royalty-free archives. So that's the first process. And then all of the images go into an extensive editing process because, when they're so many, they actually have to look nice when they're miniature.
And not be pixelated or grainy.
Yeah. So we have to edit the photos, and then they go into our production process where they're eventually encased in a resin that makes them sort of like a bead. So I would compare the texture and the feeling to a bead. And if you take care of it properly, they're extremely waterproof. They'll last you for life.
When you think about the jewelry and, people experiencing them, opening the boxes, kind of coming in the store and making their own thing, what feelings do you hope that jewelry brings out in your customers?
I would say that the number one feeling we're trying to evoke is nostalgia. We want everybody that walks through that door to feel like they're in a little bit of like an elevated Build-A-Bear.
Yes.
You're coming in, you pick your base, and then you can add your flair to it. I would also say that it's kind of like playing a game of I Spy. So there is a little bit of that childhood wonderment that we're trying to evoke. We have such a diverse audience. Children, elderly people, it's all different walks of life that come in there. But I would say every single person that comes in there expresses that sense of wonderment.
This is a perfect segue to talk about going from starting in your living room to building a studio to now having a full retail space in Williamsburg. When did you decide that you wanted to make Haricot Vert a full-time business?
I woke up one morning, I looked at the amount of orders when I was on my own, and I realized that I was in too deep and I would never be able to see the light of day, basically, with my full-time job. It's scary to make this transition, but you just have to believe in yourself and you have to go for it. Also leaving behind, the career that I thought was carved out for me. That was tough to leave behind, but then I had some really supportive people in my life that pushed me, and they're like, you know what, it's just time just to go for it. Just do it. And yeah, I guess I've never looked back since that moment. And it got to the point where it took me a while to hire people because I didn't know how to be a boss and how to run a production facility. So I spent probably about 6 months with imposter syndrome a little bit. And then I finally realized, again, I'm not going to be able to see the light of day unless I start bringing on some other creatives.
We have a lot of aspiring business folks who listen to the show. People in the middle of businesses, people sitting on their dreams and ambitions. And one of the biggest obstacles in starting any business is capital. How do you go from 0 to 100? How do you fund that? How do you pay your employees while also trying to build your business? What was the process like in attaining capital to scale the business into a retail space?
I will say with the transition of me having a full-time job, I was able to kind of save a lot of my early earnings of Haricot Vert and reinvest that back into the business. And then I did hold off a little bit too, like once we got, because I started in my living room. And then once we got the studio space, after like 6 months, it became very clear that we needed to expand, but I held off for a while. It's a pretty small studio, but I knew that I was waiting for the right time where I felt financially secure because I've kind of been a little bit of like an anti-investor. So I was against doing that, but with the brick and mortar, at first I didn't think we'd have to take out any loans or anything, but it became very clear, with build outs, things go wrong. So we did have to take out a small business loan. So that really helped. And I will say that I wasn't really aware of a lot of those options to me. So I've been telling a lot of creatives in my life that are interested in scaling their business, these options are available.
Yeah.
It is also scary doing that, but I will say that it's paying off now and I'm thankful.
How do you hope for people to experience the retail space? For our listeners who aren't familiar with you, can you describe what it's like walking through Dream Bean World?
So we call it our little dream world. We want you to feel like you are transcended into a different universe. And that is the Haricot Vert universe of this I Spy, nostalgic wonderment. But even within that, there's just so many themes. Like we can go very Barbie, we can go very apéro with the tomato girl, we can do space. So we want you to feel like Haricot Vert is a place for everybody. Even if you're more on the punk rock side, we've got the skulls, we've got the mixtapes. So we have something literally for everybody. I also want people to experience our dream world as a creative community. So in the back, nested in our dream world, is our Craft Nook program. And that's where we hold open studio times for other fellow creatives in the community to come in and work on their own projects or learn how to jewelry make, learn how to collage. So that's been really cool. Pretty soon here, we're opening up our Dream Bean Cafe in the front of the store. So while you're creating and learning how to make jewelry, you can also enjoy a pot of tea or have like a nice latte.
That's really great, that community, not just for yourself, but for just people who are looking to find ways to bond in the city is really important to your work. What was the inspiration in offering this as a service to your customers? And what has the reception been so far with the events that you've hosted?
It's always been a dream of mine to foster a creative community. I think Haricot Vert to me is more than just a brand, it's an idea. And I want people to feel like, it's not this transactional thing where you just come in and make jewelry. You're supporting us, and we're a female team of creatives who are hand making everything downstairs in the store. But not only that, our cutouts from magazines that we scan in to make the charms, we repurpose those into our craft kits, and you can purchase those and create with those, or you can be part of our monthly collage club. We're even about to offer some really cool experimental workshops where you can come in and make a collage and we'll turn it into a pair of jewelry for you.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm already thinking of so many ideas and people that I would share that with. That's really cool. We're huge manifestors on the podcast. So is there a dream event in the works that you would love to have one day?
I have a lot of dreams, but I think something that I really want to do within our community at the store is provide resources or provide events that can also help other creatives. We're still kind of working this out, but I don't know if that means like mentorship programs or creating a network of other female business owners. But I really want to do something like that. I also do have a dream to find ways to bring underprivileged children access to art supplies and artistic programs.
Yeah. What's really interesting about your work, and even getting to talk to you before recording this, was how much sustainability is a part of what you're building. I think especially in this sort of trend forward world, especially for you as a entrepreneur wanting to make sure that you're continuing to grow. How do you think about sustainability when it comes to your work and when it comes to how people experience Haricot Vert?
So one word that we use a lot in Haricot Vert is circularity. Everything we do is centered around circularity. So literally not one charm goes to waste. In our handmade production process, a good amount of misfit charms. Anytime you're making something handmade, there are things that they're just not saleable.
Just human error.
Yeah. So we have these little jars downstairs where we put in all the misfits, as we call them. And those charms are recycled into craft kits that you can buy online and in store. And in our open studios, we allow people to come in and learn how to jewelry make with the misfits because they look, you would never really know the difference, but we're perfectionists. So if it doesn't look perfect, or if there's a bubble or some sort of printing error, we'll put that in the misfit pile. That's something that's really important. Also, with all of the cutouts that we use from the magazines, as I mentioned before, we do repurpose those into little craft kits. Now we're even turning them into these laminated purses.
Very cool.
So we're always finding ways to provide that circularity. Even in our Dream Bean Cafe that's opening, we're thinking about partnering with Too Good To Go for our pastries. So no matter what we're doing, we try to find some other use for it.
Let's talk about collabs. The reason I met you was because Ashley Coiffard of Le Parchement Foref sung your praises, and you guys ended up working on a collaboration together with the baguette and bow earrings.
I love her.
I know. I love her too. Shout out Ashley if you're listening. Why was it important for you to incorporate collaborations into your work and working with other creatives in the industry?
I draw a lot of inspiration from other people and them living their creative life. I met Ashley, actually, we ran into each other in our building. She was the first person I ever saw wearing my jewelry in real life, which was really cool.
That's amazing.
And then she let me know that she was the founder of L'Appartement 4F, and the conversation started from there. I started following them and I got really inspired by what they were doing and a lot of the motifs that they use with like lace and bread. And I thought it would be really cool to bring that to life in a pair of earrings. Yeah. We've done a collab with Big Night.
Love Big Night. Catherine's also another alum of the podcast. Very cool. Yes.
Yeah, and she really liked one of our first designs. It's like our aperitivo hour set.
Yes.
And we collaborated on making them a little bit more Big Night, and she had some other ideas, so it was really fun putting those together. And when other people come to me with ideas, it just opens the gates for me, and I just start kind of in that same way of just, my mind just starts going into, okay, aperitivo this, and
and then
you start
aperitivos just start popping up everywhere. Staying on the manifesting train, is there a dream collaborator you would love to work with, and what would those products look like for you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say going back to I Spy, one of my biggest inspirations is the main creators behind I Spy, who's Walter. His name is Walter Wick. I would love to collaborate with him on some project. I don't know what that looks like, if it would be jewelry or some sort of installation with the charms, but that would definitely be my dream.
You've touched on this a little bit, but you've talked about how community and fellowship has been really important to you, and it sort of invigorates you to do your work. How has it helped you in sort of building your confidence as a creator and feeling more inspired to have your work out in the world?
Yeah, I think it's just about having those intimate conversations with other creatives and just realizing that you're not alone, and it doesn't matter what field of creativity you're in. I have a friend named Lottie that I met. She came to our first sample sale last summer, and she's a lovely chef, and she just did a cosmic brownie pop-up a couple of weeks ago at the store, which is really cool.
Very cool.
But yeah, just hearing her creative struggles. I also have a friend, her name is Thyla Ruth. She's a Brooklyn-based illustrator and designer. Talking with her, it's a totally different universe that she's part of, but it almost seems like it's a pattern of thinking, and also just the struggles that you experience, they're all very similar. And just for me, that feeling of not being alone really helps me build my confidence and just makes me realize I've got one life to live and I want to live my true creative self.
Since you are a fashion file and I have you in the room, I have to ask, are there 3 designers in clothing and jewelry that you're really excited about right now?
I will say anybody that knows me will say that every single day I wear something by Paloma Wool. She's one of my favorite fashion designers. She's just everything. I really love how she started as a photographer and blends that into fashion, which is really, I kind of find a synergy with that because a lot of our charms are from real life photos.
Mm-hmm.
So I love bringing photography into fashion. And Lian Huang, I don't know if you're familiar with her work.
Yes, she does the food skirts. They kind of have this like
lenticular.
Lenticular, that is the word.
Yeah. Because I was always inspired by little like vintage Cracker Jacks that were lenticular growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw her work, it was just, oh my gosh. Because it kind of has that collage-y feel, but that vintagey, but still kind of modern and edgy. Yeah. And on the jewelry front, it's kind of funny. I don't really wear jewelry that often. Like, as you can see now,
too close.
I'm not a huge jewelry person myself. I love looking at jewelry, but not really wearing it. If I could say there's one designer that I found recently that I'm just like utterly obsessed with, her name is Graine Morton. She does some really cool, she's on the fine jewelry side, but really cool. I just find a lot of synergies with her and how she lays out her work. It's very beautiful.
Awesome. Is there one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's listening to this, sitting on that idea and having the sort of fear and anxiety of putting it out into the world?
I would let them know that it's all in your head. Nobody really cares about your anxieties or your stress. Only you do. The only thing that people really care about is once you start creating. So you just have to create and not really care what other people think and believe in yourself. I can't stress that enough. Believing in yourself, I think, is the token for success, because if you don't have confidence in what you're doing, then other people won't see that confidence. Also finding a way to keep things simple, I will say. I always tell my team that. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't overthink things. Nothing has to be perfect before you release it. Sometimes I'll put out a half-baked idea and I'll just get a vibe check. And some of those posts that I've done that I was so insecure about are the ones that ended up trending, and people still ask for the piece today. Even if something is not finished, it's not perfect, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just let go and keep it simple, stupid.
What do you believe the future holds for emerging designers like yourself?
I would say it's a little bit scary and uncertain always, that feeling, but I think people value authenticity, and especially in this day and age with AI. I will admit I'm a sucker for it, but people are still going to crave that authenticity. They're still going to want to shop small and have handmade items. People are still going to have an appreciation for vintage items. So I do think that the future looks good for us. Yeah, and also just I think people care more and more about keeping things small, circularity, sustainability, and brands that really harness that, I think, are going to hold the test of time.
Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us. I have learned so much about jewelry and your design process, and if we want to continue to support you, where are the best places to find you?
The best place to find us if you're in New York is at our Dream World brick and mortar boutique in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Otherwise, you can shop us online at haricot.shop. That's HARICOTVERT.shop.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Before we go, our guest is going to leave a voicemail just talking to themselves 10 years from now. You have reached the Future of Food as You mailbox. Please leave your message after the beep.
Hey, Kelsey. I hope you've spent the last decade passionately pursuing your dreams and embracing your creative potential. Remember how no one saw you as a creative until you saw it for yourself? I hope you're now inspiring others to unlock their potential in the same way. When I founded Haricot Vert, it was more than just about designing beautiful jewelry. I envisioned it as a concept that could inspire people beyond its products. The photographic elements in our collage-informed jewelry were meant to connect people to their creative abilities and highlight the beauty in everyday moments. I dreamt of our arts and crafts line expanding into stores nationwide, especially the ones I loved as a kid. The idea of our brand sparking imagination and creativity in those familiar aisles has always driven me. I hope we've achieved that, making Haricot Vert a beacon of inspiration. I want people to feel wonder when they see our work, to keep dreaming and to realize that they too can put those dreams into practice. I hope we've stayed true to this vision, touching lives and hearts along the way. Future me, I hope you built a community around Haricot Vert that cherishes and nurtures the inner artist. I hope our brand has continued to evolve, staying relevant and impactful. Most importantly, I hope you've remained passionate and true to our core values. Here's to the journey, the growth, and endless creativity. Keep dreaming, keep inspiring, and never forget why you started. With love and hope, Kelsey.
That's it for today's show. I would love for you to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. The Future of Food is You is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. Thanks to the team at City Box Studios, executive producers Kerry Diamond and Catherine Baker, associate producers Jenna Sadu and Elizabeth Vogt, and content operations manager London Crenshaw. Catch you on the Future Flip.